Good morning, family. It's Tuesday, December 22nd, 2020. This is Proverbs chapter 22. A good name is to be more desired than great wealth. Favor is better than silver and gold. The rich and the poor have a common bond. The Lord is the maker of them all. The prudent sees the evil and hides himself, but the naive go on and are punished for it. The reward of humility and the fear of the Lord are riches, honor, and life. Thorns and snares are in the way of the perverse. He who guards himself will be far from them. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower becomes the lender's slave. He who sows iniquity will reap vanity, and the rod of his fury will perish. He who is generous will be blessed, for he gives some of his food to the poor. Drive out the scoffer, and the contention will go out. Even strife and dishonor will cease. He who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious, the king is his friend. The eyes of the Lord preserve knowledge, but he overthrows the words of the treacherous man. The sluggard says, "There is a lion outside. I will be killed in the streets." The mouth of an adulteress is a deep pit. He who is cursed of the Lord will fall into it. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of discipline will remove it far from him. He who oppresses the poor to make more for himself or who gives to the rich will only come to poverty. Incline your ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply your mind to my knowledge. For it will be pleasant if you keep them within you, that they may be ready on your lips. So that your trust may be in the Lord, I have taught you today, even you. Have I not written to you excellent things of counsels and knowledge, to make you know the certainty of the words of truth, that you may correctly answer him who sent you? Do not rob the poor because he is poor, or crush the afflicted at the gate, for the Lord will plead their case and take the life of those who rob them. Do not associate with a man given to anger, or go with a hot-tempered man, or you will learn his ways and find a snare for yourself. Do not be among those who give pledges, among those who become guarantors for debt. If you have nothing with which to pay, why should he take your bed from under you? Do not move the ancient boundary which your fathers have set. Do you see a man skilled in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. This is the word of the Lord. There's really one verse I want to look at this morning, and it's one in which I've been thinking about the last couple of days, actually. It is verse 7, and it is one in which many a young man and young woman find themselves falling into blindly in this day and age, and it's nothing new. Clearly, it's being written about in this proverb, so it's nothing new. But it's something that's not taken seriously, and I know that I didn't take it seriously. I wish someone would have taught me when I was younger the importance of not being unequally yoked to debt, and that's what this verse is about. Verse 7: the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower becomes the lender's slave. And so the black and white nature of this verse, the inherent truth that is plain in this verse, it cannot be more Can't be more clear. We can see in our day today and all throughout history that the rich rule over the poor. There's no doubt about that. Um, it is the way of life in this fallen world in which we live. Um, Now, I would say that if the rich that is ruling over the poor, if they are a righteous person, if they are a godly person, then that rule will be benevolent and kind and equitable and will be such that it's meant to show grace and help lift up the poor, right? But there's also situations in life where the rich are not kind and benevolent, that they are in fact hostile to the poor, and they seek to oppress and squash and unduly burden the poor. We can see examples of that in Scripture. I think of the Hebrews in Egypt in bondage being told to make bricks without straw, right? And how they were just oppressed more and more. That tends to be, at least in my view, that tends to be probably what happens more often than not, because we do live in a fallen world. So that's the first part of the verse. The rich rule over the poor. And it can either be a kind rule or a hostile rule. You know, you look overseas in China, for instance, the government has all the wealth and they squash and oppress the poor workers and families and people living there. And that poverty is used to keep them in their place. And then the second half of this verse says, and the borrower becomes the lender's slave. And this is the idea that if you borrow property or money or some kind of goods or services from someone, you then become slave to the one who lended those things to you. And that is a true statement. You take out a mortgage on your home and you, whatever the amount is, let's say you pay $1,000 a month for your mortgage, which is probably a pretty typical mortgage in America, right? $1,000 for a mortgage is probably pretty cheap nowadays. But you take out this mortgage for $1,000 a month, and it's spread, the payments are spread typically over the course of 15 years, upwards of 30 years. And so for 15 to 30 years, you're paying this $1,000 per month to a person that lets you borrow this money, usually a bank, and you essentially become a slave to that person. You become a slave to the bank. Stop paying your payments and watch what happens. Your house gets taken away, right? You lose your home. Having that contract and having been bound and yoked with the bank or whoever it is that lend you the money to pay to have this house, you are then bound to pay it, and which basically sets you off on a course in life that, okay, so if I've got to pay this $1,000 a month now, that means I'm going to have a certain kind of work or a certain level of income to be able to afford this. And it's going to, what it does is it pigeonholes you into a certain path. And it makes it very difficult to get off that path. It's not impossible, but it makes it difficult. Once you're sitting under a mountain of debt, it's very difficult to get out from under it. Sometimes the answer isn't just working harder or working more. It doesn't always pan out, because the relationship there between debt and debtor, for the one who has lent the money, the one who's doing the lending, it's beneficial for them to keep you in debt. They like that because they collect interest. And so when there's an exchange there between someone that's lending and someone that's borrowing, in my view, the advantage always seems to be with the lender. They're kind of in the driver's seat. Okay. And so you don't, there's going to be times, and there's going to be certain types of debt which you incur in life that might be better or worse than others. But in principle, I would say it's a good thing to not have any debt. You don't want to owe any man a thing. You don't want to owe another person anything. Because as this verse here says, you become their slave. And I can personally vouch for the truth of this proverb here in my own life. And I got to be honest with you, it's disheartening. And I don't want to lose heart. I don't want to just throw up my hands and just give up. But over the course of a lifetime, as you make bad decisions, as I have done regarding my money and regarding finances, it piles up and accumulates, and the path forward looks less clear in terms of how to get out from under that. And you don't want to be in this position. I can tell you. So my encouragement to you children is, and this is something we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks while I've got some time off, is you children, and actually you young men can be looking to your sister. She kind of has a goal in mind and a plan in place, and she's working towards that now. And she has an income stream that she's able to be able to set aside money and and work towards this goal that she has. And so you young men need to be looking at that example, and thinking of ways, whether it be a little lawn care business, just a little, maybe even like a little handyman service, things that you boys can do to generate income for yourselves and be able to set that aside. That way, when you are an adult, you'll be able to make purchases for things like a house and a car. And if not being debt free, it will at least lower the amount of debt you'll start off your adult life with, because that's very important. You don't want to step into adulthood buried under a mountain of debt. And that seems to be the path that so many people go down. There's a direct correlation here between the debt that you owe someone, the lender lending to the borrower, and the debt that the borrower incurs. Now they're the slave of the lender. There's a direct correlation there between that and the sin debt that we earn, right? When we sin, we become slaves to it. And it's only by God's grace that we're going to get out of that. And it's the same thing with the debt here. We need to ask God for grace to help us to be free, to help us to have true liberty. And I don't think you have to sell everything you have and move out to the countryside in order to do that. I think every person in their context, it's going to look different for them, what that looks like getting out of debt, being able to live as a relatively free person within a system that does not want to allow that. That's going to be increasingly difficult. Our system does not want people to be debt free. Our whole system is built upon debt. It wants people. It has to have people in debt. It has to have people borrowing. That's what the whole system is built upon. And so we need to think of ways as a household and as individuals within the household, looking forward to the future, establishing our own households. How can we be as debt-free as possible, if not completely debt-free? There's always going to be entanglements to some extent. I think of the gentleman that came that gave the talk to the men of the church the other night. He has left, for the most part, it seems like, the economic system that exists, and in a sense he's created a parallel system among different like-minded people. But so he's left one system, and now he's in another system. And so I think there are still dangers there for a person in that situation to easily fall into bondage within that other system. He's traded one for another. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is not everybody's going to be able to do that. So the question is, how can we operate within the system that we've got? That might be the first step, is learning to operate as debt-free as possible within the system, because it's squeezing right now. It's getting bigger. The government's getting bigger. They're getting more oppressive. They're getting more regulatory. Those things are not going away anytime soon. So that's the proverb this morning. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower becomes the lender's slave. Let's be thinking about that today, and let's be thinking about the fact that there's only one slave master that is kind and just, who loves you and who always works everything together for your good, and that is the Lord Jesus. Every other slave master is not going to be that. And so we need to remember that, and we need to seek to be Christ's slaves. And in doing so, that will truly set you free and allow you to make wise choices, allow you to operate within a world that is corrupt and fallen, and even in the midst of that, you'll still be able to have freedom. And so let's be thinking about these things as we go into 2021. I love you all. Have a blessed day, and God bless you. Bye-bye.